Welcome to Homegrown History with Limestone County archivist Rebekah Davis and longtime Athens, Alabama native Richard Martin. Each episode, Richard and Rebekah bring to life some of the famous and infamous stories etched in Limestone County's rich history.
Hello and welcome back to Homegrown History, the Limestone County, Alabama history podcast. I'm your co-host, Rebekah Davis. I'm the archivist at the Limestone County Archives, and I'm here with my co-host.
I'm Richard Martin, the oldest one here.
That's right, and we are joined once again by our very special guest, local storyteller and master craftsman, Doug Wales. Now, if you did not listen to our last episode, go back and listen to that one first, because Doug has been telling us stories about growing up in Limestone County, but also coming to town, and he and Richard have been swapping experiences, and it was just so much fun that we decided we needed to come back and do it again. So with that, welcome back, Doug.
Well, thank you so much. My pleasure.
It's good to have you back again.
Yes, it is.
And when we stopped the last conversation, we had talked about you two as children growing up and coming to town and here in Athens, growing up out in the farm in the county and getting in fights over fish and candy bars. But I wanted to pick up the conversation and talk just a little bit about what it was like going to Athens schools. You went to East Limestone,
That's right.
Limestone schools, and of course, what you could go to school working around the farm, and you might want to talk about how that worked out, the farm schedule,
Sure.
the school schedule, and just being a young adult and growing up, starting your careers and your families and so on. So with that, I guess, Doug, we'll start with you.
Okay, my day started, now I'm talking about as a teenager,
Sure.
after I got old enough to really work. My day started at 3:30 in the morning.
Oh, my goodness.
Because we lived on a dairy farm.
Oh, yeah.
So we'd get up and I would assist with the milking of the cows until time for me to go to school.
Oh, wow.
Now, of course, on the weekends, you'd stay till about 9 o'clock that morning when you're done milking the cows, and then you'd go to the hayfield and you'd work till lunchtime and then take a little break after lunch for about an hour and rest, and then go back to the hayfield till 3:30 and start the milking all over again
Oh, wow.
till 9 or 9:30 that night when you cleaned up the dairy barn. Now, but on the days I went to school, I would catch a bus. And so I had to be very cautious to get done with my milking and get cleaned up, ready to go to school in time to catch the bus. So I'd go on to the bus and go to school, and we had a wonderful time at school. I wanted to tell you about this one fellow that come. A fellow joined our class midway through the year, and we asked him, he said his name was Tater. And I thought, well, Tater, I don't know about that. But the teacher asked him, now, you going to register with us? You need to give me your name and so forth. And he says, it's Tater. And she said, no, I'm not about your real name. And he said, well, my real name's Tater. And they kept on about it till finally I understood why they had nicknamed him Tater, because his name was Belvedere. And I don't know what was wrong with his mom and daddy to name a farm boy Belvedere, but nevertheless, I can see why they called him Tater. Now, Tater, he told us, he said, when I was a little fella, hadn't even started to school yet, said my mother decided it was time for our childhood vaccinations. So she took me down to the health department, and that nurse said, don't worry, this ain't gonna hurt a bit. And said she stuck that needle in my arm and it hurt for the rest of the day. Said she didn't tell me the truth. And said then it wasn't too long after I was in maybe the first or second grade, I had lost a tooth, and 2 teeth started coming through the place where that one tooth had been. So Mother took me to the dentist, and the dentist said, well, now we're going to have to take one of these out, or otherwise he'll have real crooked teeth. So he said, that dentist told me, he said, now, son, this ain't going to hurt a bit. And said, yeah, Lord have mercy, it did. Well, we went on and we was playing basketball out there at the school, and somehow he fell kind of crooked and dislocated his shoulder.
Ooh.
And our coach was real good at first aid sports medicine, and he laid that boy down on the floor, and put his foot against his chest, and he grabbed hold of his arm. He said, "Now this ain't gonna hurt a bit." And he jerked that arm, and you could heard him scream clean the capshaw. Well, he went on and graduated or whatever, we lost track of him. And then we heard later on that he had found him a little girlfriend, and they were going to get married. And said they went up to the justice of the peace at the probate office, and had a suit on. He never had been in a suit before, and he never had been to the courthouse before, and he was just nervous as he could be. And said that, justice of the peace, and I know the name of that justice of the peace. It was James Newby at that time.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, James Newby come out there, and he put his arm around him, and he says, "Now, don't worry, son. This ain't gonna hurt a bit. I want you to know he run out of that courthouse, and I don't think he ever did get married." But that's kind of what things happened.
Poor Tater.
I was going to school. It sure was.
So with all that milking cows and all that, you didn't have time for any football or baseball or anything like that, did you?
No, really, we didn't, because they were required to stay after school to practice, and then you had to go on Saturdays sometimes to practice,
Sure.
and I was busy at the farm with
Yeah.
that. But I didn't regard the farm work as punishment. As a matter of fact, I was just proud to get to contribute,
Right.
That's what you did. Work wasn't a dirty word.
Yeah.
And I don't know why it had turned into that, but it wasn't for us. That's what we did. Even on a rainy day, Papa would send us to the crib to shuck corn or pick peanuts off when they harvested peanuts, they left them on the plant, and then you'd have to pick the peanuts off and clean them and put them in a bag or something. So there was always something to do on a rainy day even.
Sure. Well, what was it like for you, Richard, growing up in town and going to Athens City schools? Where'd you go to school?
I went to Athens Elementary and Athens Junior High, which is all up in north of town. I would ride my bike to school and all like that. And then in junior high, I was becoming a teenager, and I was interested, I got interested in girls, and I got interested in music and rock and roll music. And for Christmas, my mother and daddy gave my sister and I a 45 record player, and we'd buy these 45 records. Mm-hmm. And we would go to dances at the Scout House here in town, and they would call me up, "Richard, I'm having a dance. I want you to come. Will you please come?" I said, "Oh, yes, I'll be glad to. Oh, by the way, would you bring your record player and records and come early and set up?" I said, "Oh, okay, well, all right." But anyway, I would do that, and we would play the music, and we would slow dance. We would rock and roll dance, jitterbug and bop and waltz and whatever it took. But we enjoyed it, and then we'd take a break and then take the little girls outside and walk around the Scout House and hold hands and then come back in and dance some more. What we do.
Well, in the Scout House, for those of you who don't know, that's over there just up the hill from Big Spring Park. They're on Washington Street. They're wanting to turn that into a music museum.
Right.
It little red house that's there for years. Yeah. Well, and wasn't it your brother who said he didn't like those dances? Because tell about that.
Not my oldest, but my middle brother, David, was shy and bashful. And he always complained he had to walk to the dance, and then when he got there, the girls wanted to hold his hand, and they had to go walk around there, and he didn't like that. And then he had to walk it home, so he wasn't going to go to no more of these parties because he had to walk everything. But David turned out okay. He turned out the best of all of us.
Well, now tell a little bit about, because you and your brothers all did play football and work in the summers. Tell a little bit about that.
My oldest brother, Freddie, and my other oldest brother, David, set a stage for me to follow.
You were the baby, weren't you?
I was the
you had
baby.
a sister named Mamie.
Right, and they played for Athens High School football. But during the summer months, they would get jobs at Chambers Lumber Company or Athens Lumber Company and work in the summertime to, make their bodies strong and be used to the heat. And, of course, get paid 50 cents an hour. And that was big money back then. And we would save that money up, and my brother David bought a car after his junior year. Daddy traded a tractor for a Jeep, and David paid for the parts to get it fixed and had that Jeep, so he was very popular riding that Jeep all over Athens.
So between your record player
Right.
and David's Jeep, Y'all were the men about town, weren't you?
We were the men about town. We got to go everywhere. We had fun, too. And we were in the Boy Scouts. We had a Boy Scout troop here. We had two great leaders, Codward Chambers and Richard Tyler Woods. And we built a boathouse out of plywood and could sleep 8 and had a stove and everything. We'd go on the Tennessee River and Elk River and down those places and just have a blast. So scouting was a big part of us brothers. We all three enjoyed it all. And then in high school, I dated this girl, and she got a radio program at WJMW called Teen Tune Time. And she would play the rock and roll, and she'd start off with Shake, Rattle, and Roll, Bill Hayden comic, and then end up, what was the other one they had? Blueberry Hill, end up with Blueberry Hill, Fats Dominoes. So that was an hour and a half program. Every Saturday we'd do that. So we had, a great teenage life, and we were lucky, and our churches were very important. We had youth programs that our preachers and mothers and fathers see to it that we learned what we could learn in religion and all that.
Where'd y'all grow up going to church?
We went to the First Methodist Church here in town.
Where you still go to this day?
I still go to this day, still sit in the same pew.
That's the Richard Martin pew.
It's the Martin pew, they say. Not Richard. But anyway, religion was an important part of our life, too.
Yeah. So when you were at Athens High School, that was when it was over here on Clinton Street, on the corner of Clinton and Forest, and y'all played at the old football field that's there.
That's right.
Didn't you?
That's right. And we had a lot of boys that played football and got scholarships to all over the southeast part of the United States, and some played pro football.
I was going to say, your friend Steve Allen was one of them, wasn't he?
Steve Allen, I had to beg him to go out for football his freshman year, and his daddy didn't want him to because he wanted to play the trumpet. But as it turns out, his senior year, he made All-State and got a scholarship to Alabama, and later on became captain of the Alabama football team. So he did very well. And my brother David did very well in football. Vince Lombardi wanted him to come at the Green Bay Packers and play for them, but he had enough. Jerry Jones wrote to him and wanted him to come, but David says he's had enough football. He wants to get on with life.
Okay, so I know we're talking about football a lot, but I want you to tell a story about when Athens beat Decatur.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah. Start from the beginning. About how long had it been at that time before Athens beat Decatur?
Decatur always beat Athens in football. Always. And finally, we got this coach, Furman Elmore, and he knew how to get the boys excited and get them going. But to play Decatur, it was a big thing. There was a Rotary Club here in Athens, and the Decatur Rotary Club boys would come over and make fun of Athens. So that didn't happen. And the church groups that have MYF groups, and we'd meet with the Decatur group. They'd make fun of Athens' old football. They don't know what they do.
Doggone river rats.
And it built up a big rivalry. So we would go play them in Athens. It was my brother's senior year. I was an 8th grader, so I didn't play. And Coach Elmore finally told us, says, I am so tired of being beat by these boys, and you seniors have got to do this. You'll never get another chance. And says, put pride in it, and let's do it. And so, sure enough, they went out there, and by the halftime, I think it was tied up. And then in the third quarter, James A.G. intercepted a ball, made a touchdown. And then the fourth quarter, I think Carol Daniels made a short run and made a touchdown, and Athens won. And the town went, wow.
Because that was the first time Athens had ever beat Decatur, wasn't it? What year was this?
This was 1953, football season of 53.
Okay.
And my oldest brother, Freddie, was at Auburn. And see, what you got to remember is that when the boys were off in the war, they'd write letters. How did Athens and Decatur turn out? They'd have to tell them. But anyway, Freddie came home from Auburn that weekend to see the game because that's how important it was. And when we won, Freddie rolled up his breeches leg. He wasn't drinking. Rolled up his breeches leg and led the Athens band from the Athens High School down to the courthouse square like a majorette. So everybody was down on the square after that. Some truck driver came through and says, oh, my God, what's happening? Is the President of the United States? No, Athens beat Decatur. My brother David and his friend Bobby Swanger and Itchy Wigington, well, they didn't come down the square. The fair was here, the county fair. So they went to the Hoochie Coochie show. Yeah. And so they missed the parade downtown and everything, and later on they were wondering where everybody was. But everybody was downtown celebrating, and it was a big deal. And from now on out, Athens took care of Decatur quite a bit.
Mm-hmm. Well, my mom grew up in Decatur. And, of course, now my son plays football for Athens, and she can't hardly stand to come to the game whenever Athens plays Decatur because her loyalties are so divided. And you got to think about it, because Athens High School, it was actually established as the high school in 1934, but before that it was the Ag School. And the Aggies would have football. So you talk about at least 20 or 30 years that Athens had been playing Decatur and losing, right?
Right.
I mean, that's still a rivalry to this day.
That's right.
So, Doug, I know one of the things we had mentioned before we started recording is what it was like, a little bit about courting. And I was wondering what it was like for y'all when y'all were courting the ladies back in the day.
Well, I didn't have a car, so there wasn't much going off somewhere to court. The idea of courting was maybe you could sit next to somebody at church that you was kind of fond of, or wanted to get to know better. Mm-hmm. And at school, if there was somebody in the class or in maybe a upper class that you was kind of interested in, you'd always try at study hall or somewhere to sit next to that person, or maybe to swap notes with that person, But as far as actual going out courting, we didn't get to do that much. I didn't get my first car until I graduated from high school. My mother and daddy gave me a 55 Chevrolet. And that was the way it was. You didn't have formal courting much. Mm-hmm. And two, you'd try to go to every party or every social get-together. I don't care if it was what they used to call all-day singing and dinner on the ground at church. You'd go there.
That was a social event.
It was pretty restricted. It wasn't quite like in the Puritan days, but it was still restricted by the mechanics. I didn't have a car, and I doubt if very many parents would let their daughters go off with you in a car anyway.
Right.
It just didn't happen. Now, if there was kind of a group of you,
right.
There was one fella in our class that his daddy would let him borrow the car, but there had to be several people with him. He said, you get off and have a flat tire, you might not be able to fix it by yourself. So you pick up several people to go with you, or some of the boys to go with you. And of course, we always managed to try to get some girls to go along too. And if there was 2 or 3 of them, usually they would. But they didn't, not one girl get in the car with nobody by themselves, you see. But we would do things like drive to the old Woolly Springs Hotel, and we would kind of tour it because I had played there a lot when I was a little kid. But as a teenager, we'd drive there and impress them with it and tell them that it was full of ghosts.
Of course.
That they might not ought to get out and climb in it or anything. That there was known haints that lived there. So anyway, the courting was kind of limited, but it was a lot of fun,
Yeah.
And you mentioned the fair a while ago. A lot of times you could go to the fair. You might meet up with somebody at the fair, and they'd let you, the parents would be with them, of course, but they'd let you, say, ride the Ferris wheel together.
Oh, very
and
romantic.
when you got back to the ground, of course, they went their way, and you went your way, So I remember one time I had been along pretty good, but I didn't have a lot of money, and somebody said, you can sell hot dogs and stuff at the fair. And I said, well, you know what? I wonder if you could sell boiled corn. So I asked the people up there at the fairground, and they said, yeah, set you up a kettle there and cook your corn right there, and if you can't sell it, give it away. Well, I want you to know I sold boiled corn at the fair.
That's great.
And when it was over with, I saw 2 of the men that worked for the city saying to me that I don't know if you sold any corn or not, but we picked up 2 truckloads of cobs after that fair was over with. And I did have a lot of fun.
Hey, they didn't have to buy toilet paper for months, did they?
Talking about those county fairs, it was a big deal when we were coming.
Yes.
Everybody would display their stuff. Different people would make pies and cakes and jams. But they'd let the school kids out on Friday at lunch, and the rides were 10 cents. So we city kids got to do that and all like that. But the fair was a big thing. And then later on, they turned it into a horse race, a harness race. I remember some of those. The county fair was a big thing.
It was a lot bigger back then than it is now. I know we have pictures at the archives. So the old fairgrounds, when y'all were coming up, was there on the corner of where Market and Hines Streets meet. And we have pictures of horse races. There was a big old grandstand, and then later on in the 70s, there were motorcycle races down there through there too. Lots of things that people don't do in Limestone County anymore. I'm like, man, I think Limestone County when y'all were growing up was a lot more lit than it is nowadays.
Oh, it was lit.
And it was really fun. And to get you interested in coming to the fair for months before the fair, they would give you tickets at various merchants for the fair.
Right.
And that ticket now would entitle you for a drawing for a prize.
And
my grandfather, who owned the little Serve You Cafe, won their first electric cook stove.
Oh, really?
Yes. And of course, later on, they had a car there. And people would have thousands of tickets looking through to try to find if they had the draw number or not.
Well, that was a big deal. We actually have pictures at the archives of the car that they were going to give away at the fair and everything. And like you were mentioning, a lot of people didn't have cars of their own back then.
Well, that's right.
And so if you could win a car, or at least especially not a brand new car, they might not have.
It was a brand new car.
Yeah. So that was a big deal.
Yeah.
I want to double back a little bit because this is something that I had meant for us to talk about earlier was Woolly Springs Hotel.
Okay.
So we've talked some in this homegrown history about Woolly Springs Hotel and Resort there, and I ran an article in the paper not long ago and had the picture that was wrong, and Doug straightened me out because he grew up in that area. And I want you to tell us what you know about Woolly Springs Hotel and your experience with it.
Well, when I was about 9 or 10 years old, my mother took us there, me and my sister, to see what she called the 18th century hotel. And she said it's old abandoned now. Well, we went there, and I thought it was the most gorgeous thing I'd ever seen. And we got out and walked around and climbed the stairs and did things like that and stayed there for a little while. And it got to where I was so fascinated with it that Mother would take me and my cousins up there and just leave us and let us play up there.
Did you swim?
No. We're talking about the hotel itself.
Okay.
But no, it was up near the old springs, wasn't it? Is it east of 251 on Woolly Springs?
Actually, this past week, I went and located the old site of the Woolly Springs Hotel, which actually does face Thatch Road. And it's about 100 yards off of Woolly Springs Road. And there's a house sitting there now that's almost as big and long as a ranch-style house as the old hotel was.
Oh, really?
And then I got to exploring more. And behind the hotel, the ground goes slightly down, and then there's a valley, and then a sharp hill. And about a third of the way up that hill, someone has built a modern-day spring house.
Oh, okay.
So it looked like to me, now I haven't confirmed all this yet, that the spring would have come out and down, and in that depression would have been where they could soak in a
little pond,
lake-like. I was told by another person, they said that they had barrel staves put up like this huge barrel, but it would be what we call a hot tub for the water to run in, people to sit and stoke in.
Oh,
so
neat.
I don't know. I hadn't confirmed all that, and I'm working on it. It was really interesting. And we, as kids, when we were playing there, we pretended that was an old army fort, like you'd see in the Western movies.
Right.
And me and my cousins, we'd go, and we had our slingshots that we had made from old car inner tubes, and we had our pockets stuffed full of green plums. In those days, there were big thickets of wild plums that would grow alongside roads. They was either red or they were yellow. But we picked the green ones, and that was our ammunition. And we got pretty good at shooting slingshots, and we'd get up on the balcony or the porch, and we'd shoot down, and we we just had fun. We were supposed to be defending the fort against the Indians, but you didn't have to have Indians. You could pretend. Our imaginations were just fantastic in those days.
Right.
You know, you could imagine whatever. But I'm very interested in going ahead and doing more research concerning the hotel so we can find out, indeed, is this the property that was owned by the original people?
Well, we can help you with that, Doug. How about this? You do all your research and find all the stories and compile them. We'll help you do the abstracted deed, and we'll just trade. You scratch our back, we'll scratch yours. How about that?
I love back scratching.
Me too. Well, and, you know, that Woolley Springs Hotel is interesting because Joel Woolley was the first one to settle in that area in the early 1800s, and he discovered a spring that had sulfur in it. And back then they thought sulfur had these healing properties, and maybe it does. Of course, it don't smell too great. It smells like rotten eggs. If you ever come near a sulfur spring, you know it, don't you?
You know it.
But, you know, that's where the Woolley Springs Resort and then the Mill House Resort, and people, from what I understand, would come from all over to soak in the healing waters of the Woolley Springs. And you told me something interesting about where that sulfur water comes from.
It comes from below. We have in this, all of North Alabama here, really, geologically, you go down and you get your limestone rock layer, but below that is a layer of black slate rock that's called Chattanooga shale. And if you take a piece of that and bust it with a hammer, it smells just like sulfur. And below that is where our sulfur water comes from. If you dig a well here that's 80 feet deep, you get fresh water. If you go past 100 feet, it's sulfur water. So it could be that sharp hill that comes up past that could be a crack in that layer, which would have let through that. Not only would it have been sulfur water, but it would have been warmer than the 58 degrees. See, the water comes out of the ground at 58 degrees, fresh water.
I didn't know it was exactly 58
Yes, it is. But this water coming from way down below the layer of slate comes out much warmer.
Well,
it's not hot water now, but it's much warmer.
The Woolley Spring I read about said it was cool water. Am I wrong?
It probably was. At 70 degrees, it still feels cool.
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Even though it's warmer than 58 degrees, it's still cool water.
Right. Okay.
Well, and they used to have baptisms up there, too, because I know we've got pictures at the archives of people getting baptized down there in that Woolley Springs,
Is that
too.
right?
Oh, yeah. Going down to the river to pray. Studying about that good old way. Doug, you're so full of stories that we could talk all day and never be done, but I didn't know if there was anything else that you had thought of. I really want to tell this story.
Well, one thing that I want to touch on is the one-room schoolhouse.
Well, go ahead and tell us now. We got enough time to talk
Well,
about that.
in it was the early 50s, one or two. Me and my sister had been going to East Limestone, which had about 500 children. And my mother said to us, I'm going to take you out of school. I would like for you to go to school, to a one-room schoolhouse for just 1 year. We'll go back to the big school, but I want you to experience what it was like to be in that environment. Well, it turned out that Fairmount School was a two-room schoolhouse, and they had a lunchroom, but she enrolled us there.
Tell us where Fairmount was.
Fairmount is located on Nick Davis Road. Just beyond Mooresville Road, where Mooresville Road crosses Nick Davis. It's just right there at the corner of Mooresville Road was a store that my grandfather built in the 30s.
I remember that little red store.
But just beyond that, east of Mooresville Road, on the left-hand side, that site is where Fairmount School was, and it has the well pump with its hand pump is still there in the yard of that house.
Is that right?
And we used to pump water for the school out of that well. And it's still there now.
That's neat.
It's still located there. But that was the school. It was a unique experience. In our room, there was the 3rd grade, the 5th grade, and the 6th grade. And then the other room was the 1st, 2nd, and 4th. The reason it was divided that way was because of the population. You had to balance the kids out more in the 4th grade, so they put them in that room.
Right.
It was a wonderful place there.
Yeah.
It was really a nice experience because, of course, everybody knew everybody else and the name of their dog. And a lot of times the dog followed them to school, It was just the way it was.
So did you have just one teacher in each classroom teaching all those different grades?
Yes.
Okay. And now, I guess back then, there was an outhouse, too. There wasn't any indoor plumbing, was there?
Oh, yes, there was outhouses, yes. We had the girls' outhouse on one end and the men's on the other side.
Mm-hmm. And was it that way when y'all were growing up out in your farm, or did y'all have indoor plumbing out there?
Well, my great-grandparents, he had running water in the house as far as having a sink, but there was no bathroom.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived in another house on that same farm, and you had to draw water out of a well.
Mm-hmm.
And children were forbidden to be around the well because you didn't want kids falling in the well.
Of course.
So as Mother would draw a bucket of water out of the well, I would stand off and watch her do it. And when I got to be a pretty good-sized boy, I was probably 10, 11 years old, I kept after Mother to let me draw a bucket of water. And she says, well, all right, I'll stand here with you, and you draw a bucket of water, and if you do it good, that'll be all right. So I drew it just as good as she did. And she says, all right. She says, now I'm going to wash today. I want you to fill up the wash kettle over here so I can heat it up. And fill up them 2 tubs for rinse water over there. And when you get done with that, fill up the trough for the old cow out there. And a cow can drink a bucket of water before you can draw another one out of the well. So by the time I got done drawing water that day, I wish I had never learned how to draw water out of a well.
Lord have mercy.
But I bet your mama appreciated the help, didn't she?
From then on, when she needed a bucket of water for the house, I went to the well. And we always had to do Saturday night baths, And one thing we would do is put that tub out in the sun, draw the water up early that morning, and the sun all day would warm it up to a good lukewarm for taking a bath that night. So
now, were y'all one of those families that the whole family had to take a bath in the same bath water?
Oh, no, not that. No, but because we had 3 or 4 number 2 water tubs.
That's where that saying comes, don't throw the baby out with the bath water?
Yeah.
Because you'd start with daddy and mama and then all the kids, and by the time you get down to the baby, water be so full of mud and dirt, you couldn't find the baby in there.
Yeah, and something else, in those days, we didn't necessarily have big fluffy towels. We made towels out of flour sacks, or fertilizer sacks, whatever we could find. And you made clothes out of them too, So my Aunt Thelma had made Scotty, my cousin, a pair of underwear out of a fertilizer sack.
Yeah.
And right across the back side of it, it said ammonium nitrate. And I thought that was...
Well, I'm just saying, underwear, fertilizer sack, it's strangely appropriate, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. And especially since it was ammonium nitrate.
Exactly. All right. Well, I think we may have to do this again. It sounds like you got a whole batch of stories you can tell about Fairmount. We do have one picture at the archives that Jerry Barksdale brought of that little red store, because that was the landmark. If you were heading out to East Limestone and you were headed one way or the other on Mooresville Road, people say, turn left or right at the little red store. And I'll be doggoned if that store's been gone for 20 years and people still don't say, you just turn where the little red store used to be, which I'm sure drives all the newcomers crazy. But the ones who grew up here, we know what you're talking about, don't we?
Well, my granddaddy built that store when my daddy was 12 years old.
Oh, my goodness.
This was during the Depression. And most everybody bought what they could on credit.
Oh, sure.
And it was right after that World War II started. So
Right. Kind of kick-started the economy.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, with that, I reckon we're going to call it a day.
All right.
I hate to, but Doug, thank you once again for being on here today.
Wonderful. I enjoy playing with you guys.
Absolutely, anytime. And Richard, you got anything else to add today?
I've enjoyed every minute of it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you both, and we thank you all for listening. Come back again for the next episode of Homegrown History.
Yay!
You've been listening to Homegrown History, presented by the Athens-Limestone County Public Library and the Limestone County Archives in Athens, Alabama. For more information and to submit questions or suggestions for our history podcast, please visit limestonearchives.com. And to hear other recordings from our Library Voices series, check out our website at alcpl.org. You can also listen on Spotify and Apple Podcasts.